Kumoko was a lonely girl, considered ugly and constantly humiliated by everyone around her. Until, in a single instant, a beam of light crossed the sky and blew up her entire school, exterminating everyone. And when she realized it, she had been reborn as a spider in a fantasy world. And I have a friend who has a phobia of spiders, and just seeing this here would drive him crazy. Now she is fully equipped with a system of levels and skills that clearly resemble an RPG hack. Her powers are capable of even facing the strongest dragons of that world. And if you also want to be reincarnated in a fantasy world, leave your like and your comment down below. Tell us what creature you would like to be if you were reincarnated. I would definitely want to be a rat. But let's continue this right away. As soon as she left the egg, the first scene she witnessed was terrifying. Her little brothers were devouring one another, and without understanding anything, she tried to escape from that carnage, but a gigantic spider appeared before her, ready to kill her at that very instant. That was her mother, and to her, Kumoko was nothing but food. Desperate, running to survive, she wished from the depths of her soul to have an overpowered ability, like those in Overpowered Anime. Then a voice echoed inside her mind, offering the option to spend 100 ability points to learn appraisal. She accepted without hesitation, and if this really was an Isekai, that ability would be the key to her survival. But this world here is not like the slime Isekai, or the vending machine Isekai. This is actually a completely ruined world, and so her dreamed appraisal ability in reality is totally useless. It serves only to identify objects, and so she just wasted all of her points on an ability that makes her see the names of things. Now, with no resources at all, she needed to find food. However, the labyrinth where she was born was infested with extremely dangerous creatures, each one more lethal than the other, and when trying to look for another path, she saw human feet and believed she would finally find someone who could help her. But getting closer, she realized that the human was only the corpse of her own brother. The scene was so shocking that she lost control and wet herself. But since she is a spider, in reality only white silk thread comes out. All that is missing is for this spider to start shouting Arana, and it will look just like a certain spider from a game out there. Continuing, with her own web, she built a small shelter reinforced with as many defenses as she could imagine, but extreme hunger weakened its structure, making everything collapse. So her only alternative was terrible, devouring her own dead brothers. Before her life reached zero, she began to eat her brother's body, and when she finished, the system announced her new ability, Kin Eater. This ability came at level 1, and along with it the unlocking of the forbidden ability Taboo, as well as heretic magic. Intrigued, she tried to discover how to use this mysterious type of magic. Thinking she had a brilliant idea, she focused all her energy and tried to invoke this heretic magic. After some time passed, Kumoko noticed that a frog had become trapped in her web. But the monster reacted, launching a chemical substance directly at her eye, blinding part of her vision. The frog kept attacking her with poison. But when Kumoko unlocked acid resistance level 1, she began to dodge the attacks with greater precision, until finally managing to land a bite. As time goes by, she keeps gaining a new blessing. In this case here, a skill. The frog was already in despair and spat poison over her entire body. But even wounded, Kumoko swore that he would become her food. Leaping from side to side, she dodged every attack, and when she found an opening, she attacked from behind, sinking her fangs into the monster's nape and finishing it off quickly. When she won, she even did a Fortnite dance to celebrate, but upon tasting the meat, she realized it was one of the worst things she had ever put in her mouth. Even so, it was enough to keep her alive, and surviving meant enduring any disgust. As days passed, she captured more and more frogs, bringing them all to her newly built shelter. When she reached a certain limit, her poisonous fangs ability evolved to level 2, and her body began to transform. The system then announced that Kumoko had reached level 2, making all her abilities improve and her wounds be healed. She barely had time to celebrate, since she noticed that one of her webs had captured another creature. But this time it was a human being. The man threw an incendiary explosive, burning her entire webs and escaping, leaving behind a mysterious egg. Her fragile home ended up being destroyed, but Kumoko did not give up. She rebuilt everything, creating a new base with something that resembled a kitchen, a living room, and a bedroom. In addition, she set up an alarm system that vibrated whenever any monster was captured. However, her stomach warned that she was already starving, and to inaugurate her new house, she decided it was the perfect moment to devour that rare egg that had been left behind. However, when she tried to open the egg, she noticed that the thing was harder than steel, so she used her brilliant technique of throwing it on the ground with all the strength possible. Even so, the egg remained intact, and curious about what kind of egg that was, Kumoko used the appraisal skill. And for anyone who thought that this ability was useless, the skill simply informed her that it was an egg. This ability is truly terrible, but at least after doing that, the ability finally reached level 2 and identified the object as a threshold dragon egg. It was already more useful, but even so she could not do anything, so she decided to store it for now. While she was playing around, she noticed that all the alarms were going off, and a fire was beginning to consume her entire house. Humans had returned with torches to burn her alive, so Kumoko began fleeing from all of them. But they kept chasing her non-stop, and while she tried to hide to recover a bit of energy, Kumoko began to cry. All she could do was run while her house burned in flames. It was exactly the same as in her previous life. She was attacked by everyone, without having a place where she could live and remain, always living in misery. But she refused to run away again, promising that she would become stronger, and that nothing she valued would be taken from her ever again. And so she began to evolve once more. Weeks passed while she fought against frogs and lizards. However, all those battles made it clear that she was the weakest creature in that world. So she decided to return to the labyrinth to test a new strategy. And when approaching a monster, she started firing webs from a distance, avoiding direct physical contact. This was a very cowardly tactic, but Kumoko did not care, since survival is all that matters. While she explored, she heard a terrifying sound coming from the depths of the labyrinth, and hundreds of monsters began running in her direction. All her energy was drained, but miraculously she managed to escape. She thought of several ways to face her enemies, but when she heard a strange sound around her, she used her appraisal skill. She ended up seeing a huge serpent that almost crushed her body against the ground. No matter where she tried to run, the snake was always about to crush her. Her only option was to flee. But Kumoko had promised that she would never run away again, so she would use everything she had to defeat it. Using her webs, she began to dodge the attacks, while setting up some traps to cause damage little by little. However, with a single blow of the serpent's tail, she almost emptied her entire life bar. And in the moments before being defeated, Kumoko launched herself at the monster's neck, trying to bite it until finishing it. In response, the serpent slammed its head against the ground repeatedly, trying to crush Kumoko together with it. But it was not working very well, since she resisted a lot, and before her life reached 0, she drove her fangs even deeper, finally defeating the giant serpent. She screamed in exhaustion, but she was victorious, and her experience exceeded the limit again. She rose to level 10, her skin began to renew, and 12 new skills were finally unlocked. In addition, she could evolve from her stage of inferior small spider, receiving 2 options. She would become an inferior monster or a small monster, and without knowing the exact meaning of those terms, she decided that the inferior version would increase her size, while the small version would transform her into a more advanced species, keeping her body compact. She then chose to evolve into the small one, losing consciousness right afterward. After several hours asleep, Kumoko woke up, but felt that her body had not changed at all. And she also returned to level 1, and all her energy had also been consumed. It really went badly here. Soon after, she began devouring the giant serpent she had defeated, and with this new evolution, she had to eat much more than before, and her stamina also increased more slowly. However, she had also acquired several new skills, such as thread control, which allowed her to act like the true spider of the neighborhood, and also a detection ability that revealed enemies before they found her. But when she used detection for the first time, her head almost exploded in front of the absurd number of monsters around her. It looked a lot like a spider sense. Well, as soon as she started trusting more in her thread control to defeat her opponents, she managed to defeat 10 monsters in her new form, finally reaching level 2. Her appraisal ability had already reached level 6, and then she realized that in that world level 10 was probably the limit of any evolution. Because of that, she decided to test her appraisal ability now, and it was incredibly powerful. Using this power on herself, she managed to see all of her attributes, and discovered that her speed was almost 10 times higher than any other status. As soon as she finished, she sensed a group of humans approaching from behind her, and started running desperately to save her own life. But they did not give up. The cave was full of traps placed by monsters. Eventually, she saw 3 blue creatures blocking the path, but managed to escape by a small margin, believing they would delay the humans for some time. However, before even noticing, Kumoko slipped and fell down into the depths of the abyss. While falling toward her possible end, she tried to use her threads to soften the impact, but ended up being thrown against the wall. At least now she was falling more slowly. But then 3 giant bees began flying after her, so Kumoko could barely land without turning into a puddle on the ground. Suddenly boss battle music like Dark Souls started playing, and she saw 3 enormous serpents that began fighting the bees. Then she tried to sneak away. However, Araba, the mighty earth dragon, appeared. None of those monsters could even scratch him, and with a single strike he annihilated all of them. And here we already see the final boss. Kumoko tried to run away once again, but Araba's gaze pierced her soul. When she prepared herself for her final moments, Araba simply turned around and left, leaving behind only the crater formed by his absolute power. Kumoko understood that the next time she crossed paths with him, it would be the end. So all she could do was rely on her stealth ability, not to be seen, so she went back to running. For hours, she traveled along that miserable path, seeing only absurdly strong monsters devouring each other. While she hid to survive, days passed without her being able to sleep, and her hunger bar was almost empty. Until finally she found a nest of very weak snails, and wondered why no one devoured them. Then she decided to eat one, and with a single bite, the obvious happened. Her life points disappeared, and Kumoko died. So thank you everyone for watching this video until here. Stay with God, thanks, see you. I am kidding, this video is not over yet. She managed to pull her own soul back into her body by a thread, and realized how close she had been to truly dying. And without light inside that cave, she no longer had any idea how long she had been wandering there. But she ended up encountering those frog-like creatures again. This was the first decent meal she found in the lower stratum, so she defeated them easily and earned the title of Poison Master. With this new title, she could now cast poison magic, but all that mattered to her was devouring each one of them down to the last piece. When she finished, she decided to investigate the newly acquired magic, and decided to test it again. This time, a skill panel really appeared, and she was able to use it. Although the MP cost was very high, she considered that the magic was practically useless. Thinking that it was even more useless than her previous life, she only watched the grass outside by her side, never being able to touch it. But when she was in the middle of chaos, there was no way to go back to what she had been before. At the moment she finished her daydreaming, she noticed a giant monkey approaching. She even tried to avoid it, but the entire group appeared running and devastating everything. She tried to pass unnoticed, but when she landed, a strange monkey appeared and almost crushed her right there. She dodged all the attacks by a very small margin, then jumped and tried to bind the creature's arms with her web. When the monkey grabbed it, she began spinning violently through the air. Kumoko managed to cut her own web to release herself, making the monkey spin and become completely entangled in the process. She then drove her fangs deeply into the back of the creature's neck, and the monster let out a brutal scream before finally falling dead. With the experience points she received, Kumoko finally reached level 4. Exhausted, she moved away in search of a place to sleep for the first time in weeks, but suddenly a noise echoed through the entire area. This was a warning to all the others of that species. Soon, a crowd of monkeys began gathering below the area where Kumoko was trying to rest. The poor thing did not have a single minute of peace. All of them began climbing toward her, so she tried to go even higher. The monkeys, however, started throwing stones to stop her escape, and with no way out, she realized she would have to fight. Kumoko began creating webs to block the stones before they could hit her. She wondered what she could drop on them in order to save herself, until she remembered the potion synthesis skill. Immediately, she began casting poison spells against the enemies. But her MP ended much faster than she could kill the creatures, so, to gain a little more time, she started trapping them on the walls with her web. Even so, their number kept increasing, and Kumoko realized that this battle would only end when all of them were eliminated. As much as each of those monsters was superior to her in brute strength, Kumoko was determined to defeat them. With this new determination, one of the monkeys grabbed one of her arms and tore it off. 3 of them jumped at her while she was immobilized, but at the last instant, Kumoko leveled up, and when the 3 delivered the fatal blow, she had already leaped away from the wall, leaving only her old shell behind to trick them. Even so, they kept chasing her. One of them managed to grab her leg, but Kumoko cast a snare to imprison all of them at once. After she started taking the others down, 2 tried to flank her, but she used her webs to tie them to a sharp bridge-like pillar and knock it over. That structure fell on the monkeys below, and everything was part of her plan. The entire cave wall collapsed over the remaining group, and her level quickly rose to 7. But the horde was still not over. 3 of the ones left were evolved versions of that species. Kumoko tried to repeat the same strategy, but one of them threw a huge boulder at her. She went back to firing webs at the wall, reducing the number of enemies a bit, so she would then face only the 3 evolved ones. But one of them ran to the back and started a high-speed leap, and with the distance closing rapidly, Kumoko threw stones at him and tried to entangle him to hurl him away. But the monkey, being incredibly agile, managed to escape, so she used her poison magic to make him swallow all the viscous substance she conjured. The second monkey was already in the air, charging at her, so Kumoko quickly cast her net over him and also made him drink her poison, leaving only one. She searched throughout the whole area, but the last one was right behind her, and managed to tear off half of her body with a single bite. Her HP plummeted to 0, and her vision began to blur. But before collapsing, Kumoko lunged at him, thrust her poison spell into the monster's mouth, eliminating him. As she fell, ready to accept her death, the accumulated experience made her reach level 9. And as you surely remember, when she evolves, her body basically regenerates completely. So that is what happened here. So now that everything was over, she decided to devour the monkeys that were there, and as soon as she took the first bite, she began to cry. It was the most delicious thing she had tasted in that world, with a flavor identical to fish. In seconds she devoured everything. After defeating the last monkey, Kumoko acquired the clairvoyant skill, but thought it would be useless compared to her perception, since if an attack came from outside her field, she would be defenseless. And at that exact moment the eel appeared, a creature with all of its attributes getting close to 4 digits. But there was something very strange about the way it moved. It was as if Kumoko could see a little bit of the future, and then she understood. That was the power of clairvoyance. Now, by predicting each movement of the creature, dodging became much easier. Then the eel activated its area ability to stop Kumoko from continuing to dodge. She thought the creature had drained all her MP with that attack, but only half had been consumed. It was then that Kumoko kept dodging until the eel's MP finally reached its end. In this process, her proficiency skills evolved even further while she ran. When the eel attempted a horizontal strike, her newly evolved clairvoyance allowed her to dodge even faster. However, when the attacks came from above, she could not evade in time. About to be roasted alive, Kumoko activated energy conferment, starting to move among the labyrinth pillars like a kind of arachnid Tarzan. She spent all of her stamina, and her threads became much more resistant and also temporarily fireproof. But the eel launched an even stronger blast, which ended up burning her threads. Even so, the spider insisted, hiding behind the rocks and avoiding the worst. When she managed to pull herself together, she found the creature's disappearance strange, until her clairvoyance detected its next attack, and she dodged it by a hair. Now that the eel was on solid ground, the spider began to avoid all of its blows using her absurd speed, until she finally found an opening to inject her poison directly into the creature's mouth, knocking it down instantly. This poison of hers was incredibly overpowered. The creature's entire carcass was destroyed, but she believed that at least she would level up after defeating such a powerful monster. However, the eel used an ability called Life Exchange to recover its HP. It acquired this ability during the battle, and seeing that, the spider decided to finish everything as fast as possible. She used her threads to bind it and began pouring poison over the creature. It was her last resort, and she ended up collapsing on the ground, with almost no HP left. However, the system immediately raised her level from 7 to 10, and her body once again began its new phase of change. All her main attributes rose drastically, and she had fulfilled the conditions to evolve. She sat down and wondered whether she should evolve at that moment or not. And without a home to hide in, she would be completely vulnerable. So she decided to check her options, and if she evolved into a specific class whose name I forgot, she would gain the title of Herald of Misfortune, with enormous combat potential. And what a cool title. Besides that, she would not need to worry about growing in size, so this option is perfect for her. Before starting this process, she decided to use the eel's corpse as shelter during hibernation. The scales would be excellent defense, so she dragged the body in circles to build something that could only be described as a corpse house. And there she began her evolution. A few hours later, the spider emerged in a completely transformed body, covered in spikes, and began digging into the eel's body with her new scales. Her status revealed that she now possessed 30 new skills, and her claws now tore food apart with ease, allowing her to consume the second best meal of her entire life. In the blink of an eye, she had already devoured everything, and even wondered if the food was so good that she had blacked out for a moment. But instead of worrying, she went back to analyzing which abilities she should unlock. Among them was perseverance, which allowed her to consume her MP instead of HP before reaching 0. Finding this completely broken, she unlocked the ability, spending all her points. However, her taboo level also rose by 2 levels, unlocking the heresy nullification ability. On the other side, we see Hugo advancing against Shun, wanting to understand why he had been accumulating so many skill points until now. The flames surrounding his sword almost burned Shun as he parried the blows, and Hugo ended up declaring that one day he would be king. Therefore, he needs to eliminate anyone who dares to stand in his way. The assassins he hired would soon kill the other reincarnated around there, and release the monster to place the blame on him. But Hugo stated that he would pretend to be the hero who defeated the monster alone to avenge his companions, and his reputation would skyrocket instantly. He called Shun's abilities pathetically weak and advanced, dodging all attacks. None of Shun's blows could deal damage to him, and Hugo smashed him against a tree. The flames of his sword became even stronger, and he said goodbye, certain of victory. However, at the last moment, a whirlwind threw him far away and the teacher appeared and said that he had gone too far, explaining that she had already dealt with all his henchmen, including the monster. When she approached, Hugo tried to attack her, but she knocked him down with a gust of wind. He fell to the ground humiliated, and the teacher then requested regent privileges and forced Hugo to accept. Immediately, all his attributes plummeted and all of his abilities disappeared. The only thing that remained was a very strange mathematical formula, and I am sure my friend Renato would know what that is. Meanwhile, the spider had raised all of her skills and evolved her enhanced vision into telescopic vision. She thought the name was ridiculous, but when she tested it, it was as if she possessed several fields of vision at the same time. With her second brain, this made her even more formidable, and days of training began to pass. Her body reached level 3, and with her life ability evolving into longevity, the spider asked the body's brain whether she could combine the cursed eye with the telescopic vision, allowing her to activate the effect at a distance. Moreover, her detection ability finally reached level 10, but just like the appraisal ability, neither of them evolved. The spider ended up becoming very frustrated and hoped to gain some kind of compensation, like a superpower or something like that. As soon as she thought about that, the noise of interference returned and a warning sound filled her mind. The system manifested itself, declaring that Administrator Miss D had received her request and evolved all of her abilities into the wisdom type. The spider now carried the title of Ruler of Wisdom, and her taboo rose to level 8. I am telling you, this spider here is basically the Reinhardt of this world. Everything she wants, she receives a blessing for it. She ended up observing the new abilities and realized that this was not normal. Until now, she had been acquiring skills as if she were in a game, but that definitely was not much of a game. Upon hearing the name Administrator D, she understood that someone had created a specific ability just for her, only because she complained. If that were true, then there existed some kind of divinity controlling that world, and one of these admins treated her existence as a toy. This made her question whether she could even consider herself truly alive. Meanwhile, Hugo was sinking into his own rage after losing all of his abilities, until a female voice offered him help. She said that since both of them were reincarnated, she would not mind extending a hand to him. Hugo did not even bother to find out who she was. He just accepted immediately, as long as he could take revenge. In another part of the world, the spider was living through a private rock show, deciding to live fast and die young, declaring that she would set her soul on fire, and as soon as she played with fire, the spider realized that this gangster life was not for her and begged for some poison that would stop the burning. Her HP ended up plummeting until it reached 0, so her perseverance ability activated, draining all her MP to keep her alive. The body's brain warned that that lifestyle was not for her, and it was better to leave it to the rockers anyway. The spider completely gave up on continuing to move. However, she tried to stay optimistic while studying her new form of wisdom ability, and of course, all the other absurdly overpowered techniques she had unlocked. To measure how strong she had become, she began by opening the gate of hell, trying to summon magic seals, but she could barely keep them stable. Little by little everything began to collapse, and it exploded right in her face. She realized that controlling magic during a battle would be extremely complicated, but her bodily mind tried to stop her from using that, saying it would be too much information to process with her new wisdom ability. And basically she is the guy from Fight Club, completely schizophrenic. The two of them started fighting over the magic hat, until the system announced that proficiency had been achieved. The hat simply flew out of her hands, and when it fell, another spider grabbed it, saying she would leave all the magical part to her. The Parallel Minds ability had reached level 3, which meant that now there were 3 spider brains functioning at the same time. And now she is no longer the guy from Fight Club. She is the guy from Split. While walking, the spider realized that these abilities were probably only worsening some kind of multiple personality disorder. And it impresses me that she only realized this now. But before she had time to think much about it, an explosion of lava flowed down the ravine. She now found herself in an isolated area of the middle stratum, surrounded by several corpses. She kept wondering what could have happened there, and when she went down to investigate the lava, a gigantic dragon emerged from within it. It had more attributes than the screen itself could display, but at least half of its life points had already been lost. The dragon even tried to crush the spider into the ground, but she dodged at the last moment. While it launched a flood of fireballs, she avoided them with pure speed, and even though it was twice as strong as she was determined to face it head-on. Activating the power of her 3 minds to activate all of her evil eyes, she summoned a magic seal to attack, but the dragon tried to bring her down with its blazing breath. In midair, the spider tried to cast all of her spells against the creature, but almost none managed to cause real damage. After landing, the dragon's tail scraped one of her legs, and that alone was almost enough to reduce all of her HP to 0. The spider realized that even with all her evasion, thought acceleration, and precognitive vision, she was barely managing to survive. Not even her evil eyes were having any effect. But as she dodged, she realized that maybe there was a chance, considering how low its life points already were. While she fled from the relentless attacks, trying to think of a way to neutralize that absurd speed, the dragon's poison resistance was rising as the battle went on. He prepared a flaming breath, but the spider finally found an opening, and used her poison synthesis to cover her body and protect herself from the fire. The dragon launched another barrage of fireballs, and the spider had to cut her own thread to barely escape. But she ended up falling straight toward its mouth. The dragon rose up to swallow her, while she could hardly move, and even though she was about to die, all of this was part of her plan. At the last moment, she activated the thought acceleration ability, stretching time, and since there was no fire blocking the path, she prepared herself. The spider activated her Ultra Mega Giga Spider Poison Blast, asking the magic mind to trigger even more poisonous abilities. The Parallel Minds ability leveled up to 4, and a new brain appeared. The spider released her poison sphere at the final instant, but the dragon immediately activated its fire breath, burning her threads even without hitting her directly. The dragon's life dropped by half once again, but it managed to recover and face the spider head-on. After launching its flaming breath straight at her, the dragon no longer knew where the spider had gone. From above, a gigantic sphere of poison began to form, and the spider threw it directly at the dragon while descending and striking with her Aston attack ability. The dragon's body began sinking, and when she tried to attack again, she realized it was already on the verge of death. The counterattack from her own ability tore off one of the spider's arms, and the dragon finally sank. All of this was part of her plan. In the final instant, she used her phantom ability to create an illusion, making the dragon believe that she had been destroyed by the attack. But in truth, she was well hidden on the ceiling, ready to unleash her secret strike. Since the day the cell phone was burned, the spider had promised to remain firm, so she would do that, no matter what it cost. The lava lit up her face, and the victory music disappeared. The spider realized that the battle was far from over. She had already survived through sheer strength and perseverance ability, but the dragon had also lost almost all of its strength. With the last remnant of energy, the spider promised to release her second secret weapon and begged for the second magic brain to appear. The poor thing finally came out of hiding, and the 3 minds prepared to release their magic. The spider began the chant for her abyssal magic, summoning a gate of hell directly from the ground. The doors opened and sucked almost all the lava from the battlefield, closing when almost nothing was left. The spider herself was frightened that she was capable of doing that, but the dragon was somehow still alive. Even with its attributes almost at 0, the next attack would decide who would stay alive, so the spider had to do her very best. In an instant, she leaped toward the dragon, binding it with her threads to restrict its movements. She began leveling up repeatedly, reaching level 19, and with that she unlocked the title of Dragon Slayer. Before she could celebrate it, she realized that the lava was almost starting to flow back toward her, so she tried to drag the dragon away to consume it. But something very unexpected happened. A mysterious man discovered the news of the dragon's death and wanted to know what had happened. He tried to activate administrator privileges and decided to check it personally. The spider unlocked the heavy evil eye ability and could now slow her enemies, as well as crush her enemies with her cursed eyes and paralyze them with her paralysis eye. She has everything. This was her new combo of 3 demonic eyes, and she felt she was becoming more and more monstrous. Even with these abilities, the dragon's scales were far too hard to pierce, so the strange noise filled her mind and time became slower when she activated her thought acceleration, preparing for an approaching encounter as a portal opened before her and a demonic man came out of it. She could not appraise his attributes, but strangely she felt that he was not hostile. The man tried to speak, but his language was completely incomprehensible. The foolish spider tried to answer by gesturing, so the man simply threw a smartphone on the ground, and Admin D introduced herself through the device. The man held the phone, and the admin asked the spider to wait a moment. They started talking in such an absurd language that it seemed invented by an 8-year-old child bored in math class. When they finished, the man went back through the portal and disappeared, and the admin then truly introduced herself, explaining that her friend would no longer get in the spider's way. She was very confused, not understanding who that crazy woman who appeared out of nowhere was. Admin D explained that she could read all of her thoughts, although normally she did not do that, because she preferred to watch everything from a distance. The spider asked why she was observing her life, and the admin said that this entire journey was more interesting than any streaming drama. The admin explained that she was the most malevolent goddess of that world, and that she had been enjoying the spider's suffering the entire time. But she promised that if the spider kept moving forward, someday she would obtain all the answers she wished for. And then the phone disappeared. Inside the Demon Lord's castle, the leader gathered with the other chiefs in a conference, but nothing seemed to make much sense. Some discussed conflicts, armaments, and strategies, but none of that seemed to matter in the face of the growing chaos in the world. One of the men refused to follow the Demon Lord's orders and marched straight toward war. But when another prepared to silence his insolence, the Demon Lord controlled both of them using her invisible threads. She ordered them to sit down before she destroyed every atom of their bodies, and then warned that the war would begin soon. After everyone left, the mysterious white-skinned girl waited inside the Demon Lord's room. She announced that the time had come for the hero to leave this world, and 7,000 miles away, Shun received the title of hero out of nowhere, and the entire scene around him began to disappear. The only way for someone to receive that title is if the current hero, his brother Julius, had died. The understanding of that loss destroyed him, and he screamed in despair. Meanwhile, the spider was still trying to understand who this D really was. She realized that she was probably also Japanese, since she spoke Japanese perfectly. But instead of getting lost in those thoughts, the spider tried to focus on completely clearing the middle stratum. She finally found the path toward the upper stratum, and then began to advance. On the human front, the war had already escalated drastically, and the human troops had lost 1/10 of their soldiers. One of the generals congratulated the commander for the victory, but the commander pointed out that human power has a limit. He asked if the other had ever heard of the nightmare of the labyrinth. 15 years earlier, his group had explored the depths of the labyrinth. All the native monsters were fleeing, and many adventurers believed that an S-rank spider was the cause of all that chaos. During the exploration, they found threads blocking their advance. Then he used his flames to burn them, and as they moved forward, they noticed the absurd structure that had been built around them. They wondered if a spider would really be capable of building something so complex. Perhaps it had abandoned the place. But then it appeared, looking at them from above, and the leader was seized by a paralyzing fear. Without attacking, the spider activated hundreds of abilities and leaped to block the exit, and with a single glance, it appraised the leader. He also appraised it and noticed that it was an Azul, level 19, the same class as the spider. Among its countless abilities was the height of occultism, one of the most powerful that existed. The leader understood that he was facing something completely beyond the human scale, and soon afterward, his appraisal was blocked, and he tried to beg his team to retreat. But the spider's eyes shone, and all the soldiers collapsed. The man felt that that creature possessed a wisdom that no other had, and his subordinate knocked him down to make him regain consciousness. The young man summoned his legendary beasts and sent them against the spider, but none of them managed to cause even a scratch. The spider's demonic eyes activated again, crushing all the creatures against the ground. The young man's water creature dissolved into its own liquid, and his stone turtle lost all life in an inexplicable way. One by one all the soldiers fell. Only the 2 leaders remained within the teleportation circle. The spider launched an attack against them, but the young soldier jumped in front to take the blow, and with his last effort, he activated the teleport. It was there that the man truly realized the fragility of humans, but he also felt that somehow they would meet again. among the monsters that were appearing in the war. The soldiers managed to identify a queen with a very strange name, which I will not even try to mention here, causing the demon lord to open her eyes immediately. Meanwhile, the spider jumped and shouted in anger, since it took only a single second of her being away for her home to be invaded and burned once again. All she wanted was a simple apology, but they started attacking her again, so all of her actions were legitimate self-defense. And here we see that in reality that spider truly was the spider herself. At least before they left, she managed to mark each one of them. Even so, she decided that her priority now was to find the exit of the labyrinth. After the last battle, the system raised Kumo to level 20, unlocking the ability to evolve into another class. She would basically transform into a creature known as the proper form of death. Kumo immediately started the process and her taboo level rose to 10, making the system begin to install forbidden information. The word repent kept flashing non-stop on the interface, while the taboo menu poured the true history of the world into her. When the installation ended, Kumo could barely move, and the evolution left her completely disoriented. She now knew everything that had happened in this world since its creation, and the only thing she could understand was that if nothing changes, this world will be completely destroyed, and then it falls to her to change the destiny of her existence. But for now, what she really wants is only to become strong. The only way for her to grow in there is by defeating enemies, so her next target is the feared Araba. Returning to the lower stratum, she spotted a colossal serpent far above her level and retreated immediately. Araba would have to wait, but the ground began to shake and, with her telescopic vision, Kumo saw the serpent entering combat against Araba. Using its gravity magic, the serpent tried to sink Araba into the ground and pierce him with its poison, but Araba counterattacked with stone projectiles, bit the serpent deeply, and began devouring it alive. As disgusting as it was, Kumo was fascinated. It was a true display of strength from an earth dragon. As soon as it finished its meal, Araba launched a massive wave of energy in Kumo's direction, and she realized how insignificant she still was before him. Determined, she returned to the constant process of gaining XP, and with her demonic eye of annihilation she destroyed monsters with brutal blasts, but the recoil of the ability burned her own eyes, just like Hod's strike did. Because it was far too dangerous, she decided to leave that eye only as a last resort. Using her healing magic, she regenerated her vision and set out to face new enemies. 2 earth dragons appeared before her, but Kumo escaped using teleportation to mark them. She wanted to face them one by one. But first she needed to prepare the battlefield where she would fight Araba. The Vespoids filled the sky, blocking any aerial movement, and after seeing how Araba defeated the serpent, it became clear that staying on the ground meant instant death. The only way to have a chance to win would be to exterminate the Vespoids first. But they kept attacking Kumo and her detection ability did not even perceive them. Even being level 1 creatures, they bit and stung non-stop. With eyes burning with fury, Kumo leaped and began using her threads like a whip, casting area magic to eliminate each one of them. Her magical proficiency kept rising, and she continued unleashing all her abilities, slowly eliminating every Vespoid there. This was one of the powers contained in the height of occultism ability. Combined with heretical magic, it allowed her to cause enormous damage against Araba. The Vespoids continued falling from the sky until one of their generals appeared. He immediately charged at Kumo and killed her in a single strike. But it was all an illusion. Hundreds of soldiers began to advance against her, and Kumo finally spotted their hive. She immediately started firing at the wasp. All the enemies began plummeting, and the nest ended up collapsing, allowing her to level up once more. With that, only the final adjustments remained before the decisive battle against Araba. And then she spent all her skill points on another deadly sin, sloth. Araba's points were finally approaching, and although his attributes were 4 times higher than Kumo's, she was determined to make him regret the chance he let her escape. Kumo leaped toward him, firing her projectiles, but none of them made contact. She then began to retreat with great jumps, trying to lure him into an aerial battle. However, Araba was fast enough to follow her speed, so she prepared a full magical attack, filling the sky with arcane circles that fired showers of magical projectiles against the dragon. Some even hit, but the creature's HP regenerated instantly from any damage received, keeping the fight in a stalemate. Araba took position and launched his draconic breath against her, but Kumo deceived him, firing her projectiles from above straight down into his jaw. It struck him hard, but even fallen, his tail almost obliterated her. and Araba rose again, ready to conjure magic. Kumo tried to counterattack him with her own mirage, but while she was blinded by the magic, Araba rushed at her, and she narrowly escaped being bitten. Her threads were her only support, sustaining her escape from the attacks, but even they ended up becoming traps prepared by Araba with advanced earth magic. All she could do was keep surviving, especially because none of her magic eyes had any effect on him. Araba kept launching his breaths and charges at Kumo, who dodged by a hair from his countless assaults. Even though Araba was right in front of her, he did not advance. He had realized that he was trapped in her deadly web. Taking advantage of the distance, Kumo began to cast her poison synthesis against him. However, Araba dodged the immense waterfall of poison that collapsed over the place. While stuck to the wall, Kumo unleashed her torrential poison flood, keeping Araba temporarily immobilized. However, he managed to destroy her webs with a draconic breath, and Kumo launched her white spheres at him. But Araba dodged all of them, completely breaking through her defenses. Then the dragon's mouth opened, ready to devour her. But that was exactly what Kumo had planned. The bite made Araba entangle himself even more in the webs, and as he tried to escape, Kumo wrapped him in her rage and prepared one of her most powerful spells. Phantom pain began to tear apart Araba's psyche, while she gathered all her magics to inflict even more damage. Just when she thought she finally had the advantage, a golden radiance destroyed all her web, and Araba rushed at her at an absurd speed. He had activated every possible type of resistance to nullify her spells. There was no longer any way for her sorcery to pierce his defense. His 40,000 skill points had been completely consumed for a single purpose: to defeat Kumo. A line of flames began destroying the entire cavern, like a natural disaster. Now Araba had a completely clear path to Kumo. When he charged, Kumo realized that his self-regeneration had already healed all the damage he had suffered. Then he vanished from her field of vision, almost crushing her when he reappeared. With no choice except to keep climbing, Kumo ran as fast as she possibly could, and her thought acceleration evolved into super thought acceleration, while her prediction evolved into vision of the future. Even with all those evolutions, the battle seemed endless, and her SP was almost depleted. With her back being crushed against the ceiling of the cavern, there was nowhere else to flee, and Araba drew closer and closer, making Kumo plummet toward the hell of fire just below. Still in free fall, she summoned a medicinal orb to restore a bit of her life, and dove straight toward the fire pit. Araba kept trying to hit her, and when she was hurled against a wall, her HP almost vanished completely. She had no time to heal anything, and her only possible escape route was already sealed. A stone pillar pierced her body, and Kumo became unable to move as Araba approached. With no alternatives left, she activated the Eye of Extermination, but lost both eyes in the process. That only bought a few seconds, and then the only remaining option was to sacrifice her web casting ability to stay alive. The floor of the cavern was coming closer fast, and all of Kumo's dreams were about to be destroyed, even more with Araba in this berserk mode, pressing her from above downward. Even so, she refused to give up existing, and tried to deceive Araba once more. She tried to regain the higher position, but Araba jumped and managed to seize her with his mouth. With her last remnant of MP about to run out, Kumo activated her staff ability and shattered his jaw, sacrificing 2 of her arms in the process. She landed barely, but Araba had already prepared the next attack. There was no way for her legs to support her anymore, and Kumo began to accept that this would be her end. At least she had no regrets, but her memories did not allow her to surrender. With no energy left at all, Kumo collapsed, believing she had managed to survive thanks to her overwhelming ability. The only thing left for her was to activate her Sin of Sloth ability. There was no more chance for Araba to win that fight, especially after she drained all his stamina into mana. Reducing his HP was never the objective, since self-regeneration cancelled any attempt to bring it to 0. That is why she unleashed the Sin of Sloth to slowly exhaust his stamina points, the only attribute that could not regenerate on its own. This was all part of her main plan, and now she finally prepared all her magic to destroy him. A monster she once did not even consider a threat, the one that traumatized her, would now become her prey. However, in his final moments, Araba managed to stand. There was not a trace of frustration in his gaze. He began deleting all his skills, leaving behind only 13 ribbons, while his life points kept falling. His actions enraged Kumo. How could he accept such a pathetic end? All this time, she had fought with everything she had to survive, and never gave up a battle easily. She could not understand how he could accept death while she fought desperately for life. With a flash of light, Araba disappeared, and Kumo began to walk. Her experience had risen to level 29, and her body was completely healed. She no longer felt miserable, and the demon lady wondered if her subordinate had already heard the story of when she defeated an earth dragon. Inside the labyrinth, Kumo was finally about to reach the exit of that wretched place. There was nothing good there, but at least she was alive, so she had no regrets about abandoning all of that. And from now on, a new sunny spider life would be waiting for her. Thus, she dashed toward her brilliant future, where a gigantic spider was already waiting for her just ahead. Upon arriving outside, Kumo discovered enormous walls all around her. But when she shouted in frustration, spears flew at her and hurled her backward. After recovering from the attack, she saw several soldiers before her, ready to end her existence. She then decided to attack first, causing explosions that made the walls begin to collapse. Kumo started leaping away, and shortly after, she spotted a city in the distance. However, when she stopped to take a little coffee break, she realized she was still a horrid spider and that everyone pursued her without hesitation. So she decided to drop to the ground and began checking the system, hoping to find some ability that could protect her in the future inside the city. Before her eyes, she saw a skill called Arachne, which would make her evolve into a humanoid form. Excited to acquire the ability, she began to hurry, but ended up falling flat on her stomach because she was starving. After all, she had not eaten anything the entire day. Then, suddenly, her head began to throb. She realized that her mother was demanding that she return to the caverns, and for a moment she considered obeying. But upon finding the heresy annulment skill, she immediately cancelled her mother's mind control. Since defeating Araba, she was convinced she could face any enemy alone. Meanwhile, in the distance, some soldiers were carrying rubble, but upon seeing an army of spiders advancing toward them, they fled in terror. At the same time, a system warning appeared before Kumo, revealing that that army was running in her direction. She opened the menu to analyze their status, and discovered that all of them were as powerful as Araba. The leader was extremely strong, with a very strange name, and determined to fight. Kumo advanced toward them, since she intended to lure them into her own trap. However, the leader cut her web, and all the others began tearing the rest apart, making a tree collapse onto her. Luckily, Kumo hurled herself into the air, dodging as more trees began to fall. When some spiders became trapped in her second trap, she unleashed a rain of black projectiles, destroying the ground before her. However, when she began celebrating victory, horrendous creatures leaped out of the dust, completely unscathed. They launched webs to capture her, but Kumo dodged them all. Upon realizing that they all possessed mastery over webs, she understood that the battle would be extremely difficult. She kept dodging, running as much as she could, until her leg was caught by a web. But she managed to free herself by tearing the thread, and fled again amid successive attacks. While she was running, the leader tried to devour her, but Kumo jumped to the top of a tree. The spiders took to the air to reach her, but she trapped them with her web, caging them in the sky. Even though they were enormous and much stronger, they fell into a trap based on Kumo's human knowledge. Then, jumping over the leader, Kumo cast her teleportation magic, sending her and all the others into the volcano. While they were plunging toward the lava, the spider created a platform at the last second, saving herself for the moment. While she was trying to bring Kumo down, the platform ended up cracking, but she leaped to another platform and conjured a powerful rain of black projectiles over the enemy. She began using her healing abilities, making her HP bar rise, and the platforms beneath her feet multiply. Even while resisting the black shots, the constant healing made it impossible to bring him down, and realizing this, she amassed black spears, destroying the platform so that he would fall into the lava, reducing his HP. But she would not let that perfect meal go to waste. She pulled his body out and began devouring him. The system announced that she had reached the experience limit, rising 2 levels. While she was vomiting into an improvised bowl, she disappeared, reappearing in front of the remaining spiders. With a teleportation spell, she sent all of them to the volcano. Kumo started making a little spider barbecue for herself to eat. At that moment, a signal began blinking inside Kumo's head. It was her mother trying to summon her once again. Annoyed, she decided to come up with a plan and entered her spider domain. Inside, she ordered her replicas to eliminate her mother, so she would stop trying to summon them. They wanted their copies to enter the portal and attack their mother's mind directly. When the magic brain asked what kind of attack they should perform, Kumo admitted that she had not thought of any, but she wanted them to try anything. Thus, they crossed the portal and began devouring their progenitor like sick offspring. Meanwhile, Kumo kept wandering happily, now free from maternal interference. But she soon found a group of bandits attacking travelers on the road. She tried not to be seen, so she wondered whether she should flee or save them. Upon noticing that there was a baby inside the carriage, she did not hesitate. She cast in at around one bandit and pulled him out. Launching herself on her web, they finished the enemies one by one, piercing another in the process. When the last one tried to run, she trapped his leg, drained his HP and MP until he collapsed. With all the bandits eliminated, she wished she could be a knight to introduce herself to the survivors. But since she was not any kind of knight, she decided at least to heal one of the travelers with her ability. When another traveler saw her, she began to leave, but a woman appeared carrying the baby. And when she used her appraisal ability, Kumo realized that the baby was actually a vampire. Realizing that this child had probably reincarnated in the same way she had, Kumo became jealous and started rolling on the ground before running away from there. Inside the forest, her alarm system warned that a group of elves was planning to kidnap the baby. So when she saw the carriage departing a few minutes later, Kumo realized that in the end she was the lucky one in the story. Meanwhile, in the castle, Shun and Su went to visit their father to know why they had been summoned. Su simply blew a hole in the king's head. With Shun completely in shock, she began screaming desperately. And when the knights rushed in, she accused Shun of having committed the crime. When they tried to arrest him, Shun crossed swords with one of the knights and threw them away. But when they noticed he was wounded, Hugo finally revealed his face, saying that he was the one behind everything, and that his brother wished to become king. Su tried to kill him, but Shun used his appraisal ability and discovered that she was under the effect of a charm spell. Hugo began laughing in his face, but Shun punched him. And when Hugo raised a barrier, Sophia destroyed it with magic, forcing Shun to roll away. When Shun tried to use his appraisal on Sophia, he noticed that her status was blocked. Hugo then charged at him, but Oka pushed him back with a wind attack and launched another blast, while Sophia remained still and dazed. After stepping back a few steps, Oka grabbed Shun and released a gust of wind against the knights. Shun did not want to flee, but the two girls insisted that the castle was no longer safe. Then, with Oka knocking down more soldiers, everyone ran outside. Upon reaching the exterior, they were received by an army of knights trying to block their escape. Arrows began flying through the area, and the other army advanced against them. Using the surrounding chaos as a distraction, the group managed to escape the castle. That night, already in the forest, Shun suggested that they should eliminate Hugo, but Oka explained that Sophia was an even greater threat and that maybe the best option was to eliminate both. At that moment, the enemies surrounded the group and the attack began. Shun found Faye among the enemies and realized that she was also under Hugo's effect. He tried to leap away, but she cast flames at him, which he managed to block. When she tried to set the area on fire again, Shun charged straight through the flames and pointed his sword at her, but he did not have the courage to kill her. When he tried to attack again, she was knocked down by him, but reacted with a kick and pointed her sword at Shun. At that instant, she began to regain consciousness, but afraid of losing control again, she put herself to sleep using magic. Shocked by the scene, Shun tried to heal her, but she would not wake up at all, and his desperate scream released a magical light that finally revived her. While Oka was pushing the soldiers back, Sophia remained completely unaffected by the wind, and when Oka unleashed a much stronger blast, she locked into a direct duel with her before grabbing her tightly. Shun even tried to save her, but a soldier cut his leg, and when he tried to heal himself, he realized that his healing magic had run out. Luckily, Faye appeared in the sky and unleashed a devastating light that destroyed the remaining enemy. Freeing Oka from Sophia's hands, the group ran toward Shun, but Sophia charged at them, until Faye cast a gigantic flame at her before flying away. However, quickly returning, she allowed Shun to rescue another ally. Meanwhile, inside the spider mother's body, Kumo's replicas continued their work. The main brain questioned why the mother was not fighting against them, and the others concluded that maybe she was too busy dealing with her countless offspring. Even so, the magic brain could not understand why the mother had not sent more spiders to search for Kumo. Since they had a connection with her, Kumo suspected that her mother already knew she was a freak of nature and intended to annihilate her immediately. At that moment, the spider mother screamed to her remaining children before blowing open the hole in the ceiling. When Kumo's replicas tried to leave to warn her, they discovered that they were trapped by their own mother and that she had already decided to finish Kumo off. At the same time, Kumo wandered through the forest thinking about what to eat and considered hunting a boar deer and then eating some fruit. While saying that, she actually ended up finding a fruit, but when she bit into it, a giant leg pierced the ground beneath her. Kumo realized that her mother had left the caves to kill her. When Kumo analyzed her status, she discovered that her mother was a level 89 queen, 5 times stronger than Araba. and realizing that this was an impossible battle, she started running. But her mother did not care and went after her, destroying every tree in her path. Kumo even tried to understand how her mother had discovered her location. When a blast of purple flames came toward her, she tried to use teleportation, but the monster kept spitting fire, and when she flew upward, Kumo saw the devastation left wherever her mother passed. She realized she would be destroyed if she were caught, and after barely dodging another attack, Kumo started running again, avoiding new blasts. When she tried to teleport again, her mother tried to impale her, but Kumo dodged, only to be hit immediately afterward by another blast of flames. About to be pulverized, she teleported back to the caves at the last instant, escaping by a hair. But when she caught her breath, she realized that her legs had been burned, trying to hide until she regenerated. She ended up being discovered by one of the spiders, which destroyed her web, revealing that thousands of spiders were waiting for her. Kumo understood that her mother had foreseen she would return to the old home, and had ordered the sisters to wait for her. In moments, jets of web were launched at Kumo, but she dodged until one spider grabbed her and injected poison into her. Kumo fought back, throwing a spear conjured by a magic circle and climbing the wall. Realizing that her sisters really wanted to eliminate her, she checked her status and saw that perseverance was the only skill keeping her alive. While the sisters continued attacking, Kumo escaped with her own webs and concluded that she could only defeat them inside the middle stratum. However, they would not allow her to reach it, so Kumo conjured a poisonous mist, and using the distraction, she fled. Even so, the spiders continued to chase and attack her, much faster than she was. Still, Kumo managed to gain a small opening, but already near the middle stratum, a puppet appeared in front of her and with a single strike cut off her arms. The doll rushed to attack her, but she dodged, and looking more closely, she discovered that there was a spider inside it controlling the doll. This was one of her mother's secret weapons. Cornered between the puppets and the spider army, Kumo wondered where she should run, and at that moment several webs were launched at her. Kumo leaped away and activated her special ability, firing black projectiles, but the puppet blocked everything, and Kumo then began draining her MP. But when she tried to heal herself, a spider rushed at her, and she destroyed it with her black spears. Unfortunately, she could not use two abilities at the same time, so she created a smoke screen to escape upward. However, the puppet reappeared in front of her, and when the spiders fired even more webs, she barely escaped. At the same time, all the spiders shot their webs at once, but Kumo counterattacked with her storm of black projectiles. As soon as she realized that escaping to the middle stratum was impossible, she tried to level up, but she ended up getting caught in a web, and all the other arachnids pierced her flesh before turning her into stone. Luckily, she had released a phantom using her heresy magic, making everyone see only an illusion of her. So Kumo began firing her black spears at them. When she tried to sneak closer, she ended up getting caught in another web and realized that the puppet had set a trap. While she was trying to pull out the trapped leg, an enemy fell on top of her, and when he began to crush her, Kumo destroyed him with her evil eye. However, his weight dropped on her again, and this time she reduced him to nothing with her annihilating evil eye. Jumping onto another spider, she began devouring it, making the creature roll across the ground. The puppet started advancing to attack her, but Kumo disappeared together with the spider and appeared inside the volcano. Happy because her plan had worked, she pulled the melted arachnid out of the lava and wondered why the puppet did not appear in her evolution tree. Even so, she was determined to defeat her mother, and after reviewing her status, she decided to evolve. When her evolution ended, the system announced that all her core statistics had increased. However, she also received information that she had acquired the immortality skill, in addition to an increase in skill points. Kumo also realized that she was rapidly becoming the most powerful monster in the world and had obtained the ultimate cheat of any creature. And if before she was already broken, now with this immortality skill, no one is going to kill her anymore. By imagining the possibility of living forever, she understood that she could face her mother without fear of being crushed. And before her, the system revealed that she had also obtained the champion skill, capable of inflicting the heresy fear effect. With that in mind, she knew she could drive away practically any monster without needing to fight, and she was becoming absurdly overpowered. When she began questioning how she was acquiring such ridiculous skills, the goddess of that world called her, literally by a telephone, and tried to explain everything. And if before there was any doubt, Now it was certain. This one was the Reinhardt of the spider world. Kumo refused to answer until the goddess threatened to turn her into a pancake. Then she picked up immediately. Some time later, Kumo was swimming in the ocean, happy for finally managing to swim, something she could never do in her previous life. After a few minutes, she started fishing for her breakfast. Thinking about her mother, she decided it would be better to let her replicas wear the queen down while she would reduce the army little by little. Suddenly, she hooked something heavy, imagined it was a tuna, and tried to pull. She discovered she had fished up a dragon, and after already having defeated several dragons, she thought she could deal with one more calmly. When it launched a jet of flames, Kumo swung with her web and struck it with a black spear, defeating it quickly. Next, she teleported back to the caves, determined to face the puppet. As soon as she appeared, the creature charged at her, and Kumo dodged, trying to wrap it in her web, but it tore everything apart. She then summoned a torrent of water and began swimming to the surface. When the water evaporated, the puppet was simply unconscious on the ground, and she decided to return to the ocean to keep fishing. But the magic brain warned that a terribly powerful enemy was approaching. A flash then exploded on the land, and the new threat passed through the cloud of dust. Kumo tried to use her perception skill, but her status was blocked. Using her knowledge skill, she realized that the enemy was a primordial pterodactyl of level 139, an ancient and divine monster, and a demon lord. When she tried to flee, her body was torn apart by a colossal explosion. But if you thought she was going to die, you were wrong, because she has those broken skills and immortality, so she was completely fine. However, she had no idea how long it would take for the rest of her body to regenerate, and when a shark jumped out of the water to devour her, she destroyed it immediately with dark magic. Relieved that she still had her power, she thought about using healing magic to speed up her regeneration, but she knew it would take a few hours to recover everything, and she could not spend MP, since the demon lord could appear out of nowhere and finish her off. While waiting, she began to wonder why the demon lord was after her. Then she concluded that that could only be the work of her mother, especially because next time not even immortality could save her. And that was how Kumo began to think of a new survival plan. After a few days, she was already restored again and jumped out of the water, eating a fish. When she finished, she began to climb a tree, hoping to discover where she was, and using her clairvoyance skill, she managed to see the city in front of her. Right before her eyes, a carriage passed along the road, and she also noticed that they were the same travelers she had saved days before. However, when looking at a bush, she discovered that the elves still intended to steal the baby. In the traveler's house, a group of elves eliminated one of the guards and entered stealthily, wanting to kidnap the child. But when they reached the room, they began to fall one by one, while Kumo annihilated them with her cursed eye. In a short time, she began to monitor the last of them and followed him to his village. Kumo noticed that there were still some elves left and wondered why they were determined to capture that baby. The next day, Kumo saw a group of elves worshipping their goddess and began to eliminate them with her cursed eye. In a few days, she had already exterminated all the bandits around the city. Although the lord of the territory believed that it was only a disgusting and repulsive insect, the people were convinced that she had been sent by their goddess. After all, the demon lord possesses the title of ancestral divine beast. A woman from the city approached her asking her to heal her son, who was terribly ill. Thus, Kumo came down from the tree and decided to check the child's status. She discovered that the boy had cancer in his liver and asked if the family had nothing to eat, since the status of his mother showed that she was malnourished and exhausted. Then Kumo used healing magic on both of them, and when they recovered, the woman offered her an apple. In the following week, the whole city began to venerate Kumo, calling her a divine beast and selling little toys inspired by her to everyone. When Kumo tried to say that she was not a divine beast, the people only heard her screams, thinking that she was asking to go to the spider bathroom. Meanwhile, Shun and his friends arrived at the teleportation circle that would lead to the elves' village, and since the place was protected by a magic barrier, it was explained that the circle was the only way to enter. As soon as they disappeared in the teleportation, they appeared in the village but were immediately confronted by a group of elves. Oka stood in front, introducing all his friends and saying that they had come to support the battle against Hugo's army. However, one of the elves ordered them to leave immediately, since they did not trust humans. At that moment, Potamus appeared behind him and told the group to remain. Everyone was shocked to see him alive, since they had witnessed Sophia kill him in the previous battle. Inside the village, Potamus explained that Hugo was marching there with 80,000 soldiers, and that all the cities believed that Hugo was the true hero, not realizing that in reality the hero was Shun. That night, Shun began to suspect that the elves were trying to lure them into a trap, since they suspected that Alka had secretly informed Potamas about their arrival. The next day, they arrived at the Reincarnate settlement, where the remaining reincarnated students lived and worked on the farms. When a girl introduced herself as Sashi, the group soon recognized her as their class representative. Shortly after, the other students began to run toward them, introducing themselves with enthusiasm. While everyone walked into the house, Alka said that he would leave and simply walked away. Inside the house, the students continued introducing themselves, happy to finally be reunited once again. However, after hearing all the introductions, Shun noticed that 2 students were missing, and one of them was Kumo. When Shun asked how on earth they had ended up in the elves' village, Sashi explained that some had been sold by their own parents, since they were considered mysterious beings. Meanwhile, in the city, Kumo felt that the demon lord had left the labyrinth and was advancing in her direction. For a moment, she considered running away, but then she realized that her mother was trapped in a deeper stratum. She was completely weakened thanks to the attacks of her replicas, and seeing this perfect chance, she teleported to the caverns, a rather overpowered little skill. Right. However, when facing her again expecting an easy victory, she discovered too late that she was trapped in her mother's webs. The queen tried to finish her immediately, but Kumo cut her own trapped legs and managed to leap away. When the mother tried to swallow her with a gust of wind, Kumo held on with all her strength and even avoided being burned by the devastating blaze. Next, multiple webs began to wrap around her, and Kumo fired her black projectile, but they were unable to cause any damage. She knew she would be completely immobilized before managing to use her teleport, so she desperately cut the webs. She began to plummet, and in the middle of her fall, her mother regenerated in pieces and tried to swallow her again. Even so, Kumo refused to die. While she tried to escape, the magic brain returned, bringing new powers absorbed from the astral flow of her mother, since they had recently devoured it. With this additional strength, they unleashed a torrent of devastating attacks, and Kumo was regenerated instantly. All of her attributes increased once again. Determined to finish it, she exhaled a colossal flame, obliterating her mother once and for all. When everything was over, the magic brain warned that the last of the replicas had crossed a portal found inside the mother's mind. Now it was inside the demon lord herself, planning to attack her. At that moment, Kumo realized that the demon lord was returning to the caverns to exterminate her, and she disappeared immediately. In the city, a group from a neighboring kingdom confronted Kumo while she was eating, accusing her of destroying their spring weeks earlier. When the townspeople tried to defend her, the envoys threatened to declare war and demanded that she go with them. Kumo simply vanished, going to the forest with her fruit. In the distance, she noticed that the leader of the group was the guest in the local lord's house, and she thought about leaving the territory to avoid problems. She also realized that if she left, the baby she had saved would be in danger once again. So she decided to remain nearby to make sure everything was safe. To confirm, she decided to spy on the demon lord and found her busy fighting a great monster inside the labyrinth. Relieved, Kumo tried to rest, and at that moment the man appeared from a portal. She recognized him. He was the same man she had met earlier. He introduced himself, but his name is very complicated, so I will call him Gilly. Gilly asked Kumo to stop attacking the demon lord, which left her very confused, since it was the demon lord herself who was trying to kill her. Soon she realized that he was talking about her replica, which was inside the demon lord. Kumo explained that she had lost contact with her replica when she exterminated her mother. Therefore, she did not know what it was doing. Then Gilly asked her to leave the city and find another place to live, since he considered her far too powerful to remain near ordinary people. Kumo, however, refused. She revealed that since she obtained the taboo, she had discovered that a group of elves was trying to destroy the world, and she was determined to prevent that from happening. Upon hearing this, Gilly realized he could not force her to leave and simply disappeared into his portal. Right after that, she went to take a nap, but her sense warned her, and she received a burst of knives. She dodged and used her skill to identify what was happening. She saw a pile of dead humans and realized that they were subordinates of the fat man who had tried to talk to her before. Soon after, we see the fat man extremely angry and then dying right afterward because of the spider's ability. Soon after, we see some nobles commenting on the fat man's death, which was very strange. They begin to discuss what happened and who killed the noble. But then the servant arrives saying that the Kingdom of Oz has declared war on their nation. Soon after, we see our favorite spider worried, since she saw that everyone is going to war, and she wonders if it was because she killed the fat man. She takes a look at the Lord and notices that he is very worried and wonders if he will really lose the war. So she thinks that since this is her fault, she will give a little help. Everyone is preparing for war, and a magic barrier is formed. With this barrier, no one can escape, and then the war begins. The first to fight are the elves. The fight between them is intense, but it does not go very well for the elves, so they are forced to retreat. Hugo is very powerful. He is beating up the poor elf who remained, but she manages to hit an arrow into her friend and use a barrier on Hugo, and when he is there being suffocated to death, something unexpected happens. The ground begins to shake, and she is thrown far away. Then Hugo approaches to finish her, and the elf prays for someone to help her. At that moment, our dear Shun appears to defend her. Hugo and Shun then exchange violent blows until Hugo throws Shun backward. Hugo declared that he would eliminate both of them, since he considered them the greatest threats to his kingdom. The elf wished to protect everyone and offered to face him, but she was stopped because she was still injured. Then Shun and Hugo decided to fight alone. Without interference, Hugo then released a powerful aura and both of them advanced. Although Hugo attacked without stopping, Shun managed to hit him on the head and punch him in the stomach. When Shun pointed his sword, Hugo tried to control his mind by using the cursed glow of his eyes. But Shun ended up resisting, and ever since he received the title of Dragon Slayer, he had become resistant to all magic. Hugo ordered him to surrender, but after taking another punch in the stomach and losing his sword, he fell, trying to get up. Shun replied that the world did not belong to anyone, but to everyone who lived in it. Seeing that, Sophia called Hugo an ignorant failure and said he was nothing more than a toy for her cause. At that moment, the commander of the demon army appeared and announced that his troops were advancing to attack the village. After using Hugo's army as a distraction, the demons moved on to annihilate the elves. Shun then decided to face Sophia, but when he saw Yuri being taken away, he tried to run after her. However, Sophia blocked his path. He attacked her, but Sophia summoned her sword from the ground, and with a push, she threw him far away, mocking him and calling him a weak little boy. He tried again, but she dodged and hurled him back. Realizing that Shun would not be able to defeat her, the group decided to help him. 2 extras ran to face the demon commander, exchanging blows of energy and chasing him away from the battlefield, while at the same time Yuka fired an arrow, but Sophia grabbed it and dodged all the others with ease, blocking even Hearns' shield. Shun and the other NPC tried to strike her, but Sophia knocked them down effortlessly. She explained that she was intentionally sparing them, because her master had ordered that none of them should die. Yuka tried again with more arrows, but Sophia blocked everything naturally. Shun tried to take advantage of the distraction to attack her, but he was thrown back again. When he demanded to know why he was being spared, Sophia answered that it was because they were the administrators of this world, and they needed the power of all of them. Elsewhere we see our beloved spider Akuma preparing for battle and making her absurd monologue. She is delighting herself with everyone killing each other there, since afterwards she will gain a lot of XP. She then throws herself into the middle of everyone and causes an absurd explosion. She is very happy that she leveled up, but then the conflict begins beside her. But let us ignore that PlayStation 2 fight and go to the more interesting fight. Shun's. The people there are clashing, and Shun's group is not doing very well, but he is determined not to surrender, believing that defeating Sophia was the only chance to win the war. But then a random lunatic came down out of nowhere flying from the sky, and with just one kick knocked down the poor NPC who was there. When he faced the group, everyone realized that he was the last reincarnated student besides Kumo, and no one understood why he was aligning himself with a demon army. The boy named Kyoka explained that the admins had ordered the destruction of the elves because they considered them a threat to the world. As commander of the demon army, it was his duty to take part in the war against the elven people. By raising his hand, a vast army of demons surrounded him. However, a portal opened in front of Shun, and elves appeared above them, warning that the demon lord was invading the elves' village and only Shun could stop her. Before they could teleport him, the human Kyoka pierced one of the elves with his sword, killing him instantly. The remaining elves fired at them, but Sophia eliminated everyone with the black mist. At the request of the leader of the elves, they summoned robots through portals, which immediately advanced against Sophia. When she tried to eliminate them with her dark mist, she realized that the robots were completely immune to the attack. Surrounded on all sides, the robots opened fire, but when the dust settled, Sophia remained uninjured inside a protective pyramid. As they advanced, the robots launched another barrage of attacks, but Sophia released a colossal wave that began to sink them into the ground. The elves fired other showers of arrows, but Sophia counterattacked with another devastating wave, obliterating them all. Trying to stop her, Shun ran toward her, but Kaio summoned a sword and a demonic portal. He blocked Shun's attack and kicked him far away. Shun managed to land on his feet, but he lost a tooth in the process. When an entire army of elves ran toward him, Kaio opened a demonic portal and launched a rain of demonic arrows at them, eliminating all of them within seconds. Two little guys there charged at the man, but he parried both of their blows with ease and blocked another attack from Shun, calling him the weakest hero in history. He then pushed him back brutally and tried to decapitate him, but Anna appeared in front and took the blow in his place. Trying to save her, Shun began using magic to heal her, and at that moment the system announced that he had reached the limit of proficiency, and that the taboo had reached level 10. Right after he woke up, the system declared that the taboo would be activated, and Shun began screaming in pain, unable to be healed by Keisha's magic. Hugo, taking advantage of the situation, tried to attack Sophia from behind, but she noticed his shadow and blocked his sword with ease. She lifted the boy by the hair, ready to finish him off, when an intense light shone in her face, making her release him. Behind her, her master had finally appeared. Elsewhere, we see Kumo, who after all the chaos that happened that I have not even told you about, managed to obtain a new form, and now she is half human, half spider. She then leaves a few little things for her offspring and goes away. Thinking about what to do now, she takes a look and sees that the entire city is in flames and some elves are invading the mansion. The situation is devastating, and the nobles are very worried about what is happening. They are saying goodbye to the baby and leaving for a safe place with him. But at night, while he is trying to sneak out with the baby, he is found by the raiders. He ends up taking an arrow in the leg, and while trying to escape, he is struck several times by many arrows. Then the baby goes there and bites the man in order to take care of him. And since this baby is a vampire, the guy becomes super strong. He ends up massacring everyone who is there with ease. Then the leader of the elves appears, and the guy is very strong. He orders the elves to kill her, but even so the man is still alive and tries to protect her at all costs. Then the elf tries to summon a magic circle, but Kumo appears and lands a very strong punch right in the guy's face. The other guy who had been turned into a vampire was about to die, and Kumo went there and healed him. The elf asks who on earth she is, and Kumo tries to cast a magic barrier, but the man deactivates it. He recognizes her as an enemy, introduces himself, and then rushes at her. Their fight is insane, with him neutralizing her magic. She tries to jump to the wall, but can barely take a step. She uses her thought acceleration ability to try to do something, but she cannot do anything, since all of their stats are being blocked. She then decides to rush him in close combat anyway. She manages to counterattack him, but she realizes that he is a robot. She notes that she needs to finish him quickly, and the two start brawling again, with the guy suddenly pulling out a machine gun from his hand. She barely dodges, but ends up getting hit. Dodging him skillfully, she even manages to lose her head yet still hit him. The robot realizes he needs to finish her right there, or it will cause problems in the future. The guy keeps using the stolen bazooka, and poor Kumo can only dodge. She even tries to use her Evi, but the guy dodges quickly, so she decides to wait for the perfect moment to strike. Suddenly, Ariel demands to know what Potamus is doing fighting Kumo. He stomped the ground and told her to turn around, and Ariel replied by ripping his head off with a slap, promising to turn him into scrap. With the enemy defeated, Ariel approached Kumo and proposed a truce. With her abyss magic, she would not be able to annihilate Kumo, and Kumo's replica inside her continued to influence her thoughts, and Ariel concluded that it would be more advantageous to keep Kumo as an ally. Thus, the two shook hands, sealing an improbable agreement. Meanwhile, the real Potamus awakened in a laboratory full of his clones, convinced that now Kumo was a real and unpredictable threat. He decided that next time he would eliminate her without hesitation. The next day, Kumo and Ariel left the city together, and along the way Ariel invited Kumo to join her army, since she intended to destroy the true Potamus before he ruined the entire world. After that, Ariel called the man who was protecting the little girl Sophia to also join the group, since both of them were vampires and no longer had a home to stay in. The young man was very confused when he realized that he had become a vampire, and Sophia apologized for having turned him, but he stated that he was happy to be able to protect her forever. He then agreed to follow Ariel toward the territory of the demon, realizing that this was a moment that could truly change the fate of the world. Kumo decided to follow them, uniting the forces that could prevent its destruction. And so she finally joined the other heroes. And here our big recap comes to an end. I hope you enjoyed it. Do not forget to subscribe and leave a like. Also comment down below. I love spiders, so we can know that you watched until the end. And that is it. Everyone, take care. God bless you. Thank you. Goodbye.